We have any Ollie members or Ollie alumni in the audience tonight? When I first started taking classes at Ollie years ago and then eventually started to teach stories of Western North Carolina's past, I had no idea how rich the history and the culture, particularly the oral part of storytelling, was. Our story tonight, our hero is this guy, Jesse James Bailey, who was a lawman 100 years ago. He was a good man who honored his badge, and he was a pretty good storyteller. He was, during Prohibition, sheriff in 2 Carolina counties and deputy sheriff in 3 Tennessee counties. Sometimes he would get a lead of old John's a stillin' or old John's a handlin' liquor. And he went to investigate, and old John would slide across into Tennessee to avoid arrest. And likewise, moonshiners in Tennessee would slide across to avoid arrest in North Carolina. Well, Jesse said, we got to change this. So he went to visit the sheriffs in 3 Tennessee counties and said, boys, I'll make you a deal. I'll make you a deputy sheriff in Madison County. You make me a deputy sheriff in your county, and that way we'll catch the bad guys. And they went, you know, that's a pretty good idea. I think we'll do it. And from that point forward, if you thought you could get away by sliding across the border, you were in for a bad fall, because the long arm of the law could reach you because they had jurisdiction. This is all thanks to Jesse James Bailey, who was a good man. He was smart, he was sharp, he had a good sense of humor. For example, trial of a notorious bootlegger and who insisted that he was innocent. Judge was very frustrated, tried to throw him off his defense by saying, now Josh, is it true that you're the man who made the sun stand still? Josh went, no sir, I'm just the man who made the moon shine. Bailey swore that he never touched a drop, but he did manage to squeeze production, which jumped the price of a gallon of moonshine from $15 to $75 a gallon, and 100 years ago, that was a lot of money. Now, men on both sides of the law enjoyed burnishing their reputations, but when he was sheriff of Buncombe County, it was a dangerous place. Over 2 years, Bailey investigated 14 murders. He kept a big scrapbook of 22,000 prescriptions for confiscated moonshine, because back then you could get your drinking liquor from the sheriff as long as you had a prescription and a good story to tell. Doctors would write prescriptions for just about any ailment, including cancer, depression, stomach aches, or a real bad rash. Bailey said that he doctored Buncombe County folks for anything from ingrown toenails to falling hair. Sense of humor? Yeah, he tells the story of this guy who came into the sheriff's office one day looking a little nervous. He handed in his prescription, which read, please give the bearer 1/2 gallon of your good whiskey to rub the other end of a cow that just had a calf. Not a good story. He turned him down. Young Jesse grew up during the tobacco boom of the 1890s, and he would go into downtown with his dad to sell their crop at the tobacco auction. Well, downtown streets were not paved back then, and after 2 days of torrential rains one time, a local businessman came in, had to cross that street, and as he worked his way around this gigantic, deep mud puddle, he noticed there was a hat floating in the mud. He tried to pull that hat out with his cane and noticed something strange. The hat was moving on its own. There was a head under the hat. Good golly, the businessman cried, sir, are you human? Well, yeah, I think so. Well, you're not in the mud that deep, are you? And the head replied, oh, no, sir, I'm standing on a wagon load of hay. On their way to the tobacco auction, Jesse and his dad stopped to look at one of the very first automobiles for sale in Asheville. The salesman cried, well, you know that you don't need a horse nor nothing. You just sit in that seat and it'll go 10, maybe 12 miles an hour. Jesse's dad said, you know, up in Madison County, we have a plow that doesn't need a horse nor a man to run it. Well, that's amazing, said the car salesman. How do you operate something like that? Jesse's dad smiled and with a wink said, with my wife and a mule. For most of his career, Jesse James Bailey was a detective for the railway system. Now, back in those days, steam locomotives ran real slow. They needed to get coal and water every couple of miles. And the rail cars were easy to break into to steal cargo, which attracted gangs from as far away as Chicago. But moonshine, well, that was more or less of a local problem. And there was a time that Jesse found a moonshiner and collared him because he had a big load of wood under his arms that he was putting under a still. George, what are you doing out there? Oh, hi, Sheriff. I'm hunting foxes. George, you can't hunt for foxes without dogs. Oh, I'll borrow some dogs from the neighbors. Uh-huh. And what about the wood, George? Oh, that's to warm my feet. You mean under the still right over there? Heavens to Lord! You mean there's a still there? George cried. Well, he admired George's creativity, but he made him repeat his story to the judge. Did George get jail time? I don't know. But at least now you have an inkling of some of the colorful history and some of the personalities that come from Western North Carolina's very own stories.